today, this is the first of two mayoral conversations with the mayoral candidates we'll be having today. This one at 10, next one will be at 3 o'clock. And it's an editorial board session. The one member up here who's not a member of the board is Fran Spielman, but we really like having Fran here because we think she knows more than most folks about these issues, and she can help us ask some questions. It is an editorial board meeting for the purposes of making a decision about an endorsement. I want to say a couple of things. One is, thanks for being really patient. This is really late in the game to be having this kind of a session. And some of your folks have been calling us over the last week saying, are you guys going to be doing this? And we were honestly waiting to see if the field could get a little smaller, right? We thought we'd get a better debate if there weren't 14 candidates. That has not happened. It's gone down just a bit. And we also thought maybe if we did a poll, which we did do, it might make it obvious that some people are serious candidates and some are not. And first of all, it did not do that. Secondly, we thought the poll left out people we really respect and wanted to hear from, and we didn't want to exclude them from the debate. So we did this two-session thing. My last point about that is why this group as opposed to some other combination of candidates. Marilyn Garcia and I literally pulled your names out of a hat, and we did it on basis, with one exception. So I want to be really transparent. It was looking too white. So we flipped, just one flip between the afternoon session and the morning session, because, this is Chicago. We need diversity even in our debates. And that's how we made this decision. Wanted you to know that. And then finally, what we're hoping for today is not a forum kind of thing where we just go down the line and ask you a question, you each give an answer. We're also not looking for a big brouhaha. We're looking for a really thoughtful conversation, a discussion about really important issues. So I'll start it out, and my first question will go to Bill Daley. Yeah, look at me. And
no, just.
Oh, by the way,
I want to bet on that.
I'm not going to go through that. We're also not going to do the stump speech openers. You've all done that enough. So my first question is for Bill Daley. Mr. Daley, as I went through our questionnaires, among other places, it looked to me that among all the candidates, you were the most forthrightly in support of the possibility of a state constitutional amendment to change the pension benefits for current city employees as part of a plan to get a handle on our financial crisis with respect to unfunded pension liabilities. So first of all, I want to ask you, is that accurate? And after you've talked, we'd love to hear from the other folks and what they think about that. And secondly, it gets to a larger issue about the role of labor unions in Chicago and in resolving our financial problems, because as I think many of you know, the labor unions are very opposed to any changing of pension benefits, even for young new employees. And my last point about that, of course, is no secret that part of the ownership of the group, the Chicago Sun-Times, is labor unions. So that's our issue to deal with. So, Mr. Daley, would you like to respond to that?
We have 50,000 retirees of the city of Chicago and 35,000 present employees. They represent about a $28 billion obligation by the citizens of Chicago to them. I have stated repeatedly, and I said this to the CFL when I met with them, that you cannot have an honest discussion in the world we live in right now with the Constitution as it is and has been interpreted by the Supreme Court. Even small changes to pensions that Mayor Emanuel and labor leaders tried to accomplish were not approved by the court. So we are living in this box. And I've said at the same time, lots of revenue ideas I've thrown out, some which some people don't like. I've said everything ought to be on the table on that side. But if you have no means to change, and it should not, I do not believe that the progress we need to make on this issue should be on the backs of the retirees. There must be a combination of changes to the system and new revenue. You cannot have the discussion on this side of the table with the Constitution as it is and how it has been interpreted. So it's not we can't sit down with labor and have an honest negotiation on this issue in the world we live in. So we can, talk about all the revenue side, but the problem is, and the 85,000 people that I talk about, and I know many people who are on pensions, and they should not get screwed, okay? But on the other hand, you can't just do this on the backs of the taxpayers. But labor and the political system cannot come together and have an honest negotiation on these issues unless the Constitution is changed. It is impossible. And there may be fake news some places, but there's no fake math, and the math doesn't work.
So let's just get you all involved in this conversation, not just rigidly. I think one of the things to understand is I understand this now, correct me, but that retirees get a 3% increase in their pension benefits every year. And one of the arguments the mayor has made, and I
Compounded.
think, pardon me? Compounded, very important to say. And one of the points I think you've made and the mayor has made, current mayor, is that it would be better if the increase was simply the cost of living increase and not 3% automatically compounded. So who has a different view about why Mr. Daley is wrong? Jerry?
I
Mr.
do.
Joyce?
The retirees held up their end of the bargain. So to go in and change the Constitution to take away a benefit that they negotiated for, they held up their end. They did what was required of them. When they agreed to work for the city, whether it be a first responder who agreed to run through a burning building or run into a shootout, they didn't say, oh, but if there's not enough money, I won't do that. They did everything that was required of them. So to change the Constitution to take that benefit away from them is not only unjust, it's morally reprehensible, and it's not something that we need to do. It is a huge liability, no question about it. We need alternative sources of revenue, no question about it. And we cannot solve it on the backs of residential property owners, no question about that. What we need is some breathing room. We need to come up with the alternative sources of revenue, which we have identified, govern and grow our way out of this. Bill's talked about the 3 million population. Whatever that number is, we need to grow the economy. We need to grow our city. We need people to move into the city, not move away.
So when you say breathing room, I assume you're alluding to the idea that we would borrow $10 billion?
No, not under the current arrangement. If we had the full faith and credit of the United States, or possibly what Illinois' lending borrowing rate would be, I don't know. But given the facts that are out there right now, no, that's the $10 billion.
Amara Enyia, what's your view?
This conversation has to happen against the broader context of what's happening in the labor movement nationally. So we just had a Supreme Court decision that essentially weakened labor unions almost beyond repair. So I definitely do not support changing the Constitution. It does cut benefits for people who are promised those benefits. That is, in my view, an easy solution to skirt our responsibility. At the national level, we have labor unions that have been weakened. We also have this issue of wage stagnation and the erosion of worker rights. So these are all issues that are directly tied to having strong labor unions. And if we don't have that conversation with the quality of our workforce, the kinds of jobs that we are attracting, making sure that we don't have increasing income inequality, then all we will do is change the Constitution while workers fall further and further behind. And it's also important to note that these public sector jobs were the way that many people got into the middle class, our teachers, our police, our firefighters. So if we're cutting the Constitution, we are essentially eroding the middle class that the city needs to have some revenue to support our finances.
You know, I have to tell you, this is a conversation. We're the editorial board. We have opinions, and we find it really hard to figure out where the money's going to come from if we don't also do something with the benefits. Mr.
So
McCarthy,
let me
I
just,
wanted to correct something.
yeah, go ahead.
Just because you change the Constitution doesn't mean you take benefits away. That has to be negotiated.
Right.
So just changing the Constitution does not reduce anyone's benefits.
they've
But
been
to have that
taken away.
honest discussion and negotiation cannot be done unless you change the equation here.
But the benefits have already been taken away, Bill. And I'm not disagreeing, but let's just get to the point here. I think I'm the only person here who has a pension. And I agree with Jerry that the obligation is on government and they did not fulfill their obligation. And that's just not okay. And just take it a step further. Not only are the pensions in jeopardy, but we've already pulled the health benefits rug out from underneath the retirees. Simply unconscionable. So there's ways to come up with this money, and we can detail it up front just to get it started. There's a number of things that we could do because to come up with that $300 million that we're going to need in 2020, right? Is it
Right.
right? There's a number of things that we could do, but we have to be serious about this, and we have to fulfill our obligation. We need compassion, by the way, and I want you to just think about this. I said this a long time ago. What's been happening on the southwest border is akin to what's been happening in this city, because we're pulling health benefits from people who have stage 4 cancer. And at the same time, we're closing schools and pulling social services and mental health services from the neighborhoods that need them the most. We have an obligation as a government to have compassion for our citizens, and we don't have it here.
Yeah, we also have to pay for these. So, Mr. Wilson, number one is, what's your take on restructuring the Constitution? Secondly, if you don't do that, where would you find the money?
Well, I'm from leaving it as it is. So for the simple fact is that when they started to work, they got certain benefit, and the city of Chicago owned that what they have coming, right? The other question is how do you raise the money to take and pay for all this? Well, if you continue to raise taxes, you're gonna run more people out of the city. Continue to raise taxes, you're gonna run businesses to a more friendly state like Indiana, Arkansas, Texas, I think Tennessee. But if you lower taxes, you have more business comes into the city that create more jobs and create more of a tax revenue, right? So, but if you continue to raise it, we're not gonna ever get out of that situation, all right? From a business perspective, we lower price